Hello everybody. We're in section 1.2 and we're going to learn our third method for solving quadratics, and this is by completing the square. Okay, this is going to be very valuable for us once we get to circles later on in the semester, but right now we're just going to look at a quadratic and solve it by completing the square. Okay, when you complete the square, the first thing you need to do is move the constant over. Okay, so I'm going to add the 21 to both sides, that's the constant, I'm going to get it over. So I rewrite the left hand side, I got x squared plus 4x, leave some space, equals 21. Okay, next, take your b term with the sign attached. So I do this work off to the side. So here's my b, it's the coefficient on the x, right there. So I take a positive 4 and I divide it by 2. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. Then, take that number and square it. So I take 2 squared and I get 4. Now add that to both sides. That's why I always leave some space. And this is an equation, so whatever you do to one side, you got to do to the other. So plus 4 here, plus 4 here. Left hand side, I now get x squared plus 4x plus 4. And on the right hand side, I get a 25. Okay, this adding the 4, that's what you need to complete the square. So now let's take a look at the next step. Okay, now we're going to factor the left-hand side. So here, this is one of the few times we're going to factor when it's not equal to 0. This is only when you complete the square. When you're solving it by factoring, it's got to be equal to 0. But here, we're completing the square. So I want to factor this left-hand side. I take 4. I'm looking for two numbers to multiply to 4 and add to 4. And this is going to be 2 and 2. This automatically factors to x plus 2, x plus 2 equals 25. And that's better known as x plus 2 squared. So one thing to notice here is, back when we looked at step number 2 or 3, whatever you take b and divide it by 2, that's how it's going to factor every single time. So we took 4 and divided by 2, that 2 that we got, that's how it will factor every single time. And when you square that number, that b over 2 squared, this is what you need to add to make it factor that way. You're forcing this pattern to happen. And our last step is now we've completed a perfect square over here, and the square root method takes us home. So square root both sides. Be very careful you're doing that to get rid of this square. This gives me x plus 2. Don't forget that plus or minus, and square root of 25 is 5, and then break into your two solutions. So x plus 2 is 5, and x plus 2 is minus 5, and then same steps, minus 2, and we get answers of x equals 3 and x equals minus 7. And that's completing the square. So let's take a look at one more problem like this. Alright, solve this by completing the square. So step 1, move the constant over. Add 13 to both sides. X squared minus 6x, leave yourself some space, equals 13. Then take the b term with the sign attached, so that minus is attached to that 6. Cut it in half, it's going to give us minus 3. Remember, this is how it's going to factor. And then take minus 3 and square it. Remember, when you square something, it's always going to be positive. So this is what, or 0, and this is what you need to add to both sides. So, okay, plus 9. This gives me x squared minus 6x plus 9 is 22. Left hand side is automatically going to factor to x minus 3 quantity squared equals 22. And now I'm going to do the square root method. Okay, so square root both sides. That one does this side, so I get x minus 3 is plus minus square root of 22. Check, can I clean up this root at all? 22 is not a perfect square. Any perfect squares in 22? Nope. 22 is 2 times 11. No dice there. Add 3 both sides. And we get answers of x equals 3 plus root 22. And x equals 3 minus root 22. And these are unlike terms. No combining them. But we still get 2 nice answers. And that's completing the square. Alright, one more method to go, solving by quadratic formula, and that is the next video.